Hello, Mark Lloyd Larson here for the Dreamcatcher Podcast. Thank you for joining us. Today, my guest is Dr. Kramer from San Diego. Welcome, and thanks for joining us. So, I think we go back to 2018. We were just talking a little bit ago where we met, Life on Fire. It was the first time I think I'd ever met you, and I was kind of a different person then. I didn't talk near as much as I talk now. Karen's going, yep, shaking her head. So, yes, I have had my voice. So Karen, have you always lived in San Diego?
I have. I am one of those rare San Diego natives. I actually live on family land that was my grandparents landed here in 1940s, and we had 5 generations of us that lived on the family land.
Wow, that is so cool. I didn't know it'd been that long. So that's really so. I know you have many things you do. So going back to when you started your journey here, what started your journey?
Okay, so I can go back to many things. Are we specifically talking about the Villa Vision Wellness and Retreat Center, or even further than that?
Either further, how it got you to that?
Well, I will, without getting into too long of a story, I had the pleasure of the day after I graduated with my undergraduate degree, to find myself in an organization which I flourished. So for over 30 years, I've been in the field of leadership development and coaching, and have had the opportunity to coach CEOs, mid-level managers, on various different organizations all over the world, from Boeing to American Express, Nike, and Google.
Wow. Cool.
And then in 2009, stepped out of that and started focusing on coaching teenagers and 20-somethings.
Okay.
And then, Mark, thinking about when you and I met, it was actually right after I was going through my divorce. So I was a different person back then, too. Right. And that actually was inspired me to do what I'm doing now. So in the coaching that I'm doing right now, it truly is focusing on ideally those women going through and after divorce, but it truly is expanded even more than that to focus on grief recovery. Because when you think about it, whether it's divorce or death of a loved one, or in some cases of my clients, it's sexual childhood trauma, there's various different things that I've had the opportunity to help them release and heal from.
That is so cool. And there is so much of that. I know what you were bringing up. I just am, where I'm talking to people, I run into so many people that with depression, anxiety. I mean, there's so much suffering out there, and a lot of people don't know where to turn to. So I think this is so awesome that you're going this path. So the one you brought up, your Villa Vision. So what actually was the impetus to start that?
Yes, well, it's interesting. Once you get clear on what you don't want, right? In my case, I was getting rid of what I call the obligations of some work that I was doing, that it really got me clear, almost to the point where I was like a rubber band, like, I have to do this. I love doing this. I want to get out of bed in the morning. Like, we are aligned with something, and you know that, Mark. Mm-hmm. It's like nothing's going to stop me from getting out of bed.
Yes, I do that. Yes.
I'm excited to get up and do this. And it really started with a vision that I had 3.5 years ago. I'm counting to about 3.5 years ago. And it was a visualization exercise that I did. And what it was a vision of a villa where I was helping more and more women. And so it lovingly became called my Villa Vision.
Right.
Then hence, as it became a business, that became the name of the business. So it started with that vision 3.5 years ago, and everything else just fell in line with it. And I love saying, even when things are like, well, didn't you have any challenges? Of course I had challenges going towards your degree, right?
Oh, yeah.
But what I consider those challenges to be is they were also bumpers to let me know what was the boundary of things that I didn't want to do. Like in some cases, it's like, people would say, hey, do you want to say write a book? And I'd go, oh, and I go off in that direction. And I'm like, no, that's not where I want to go right now. Or, hey, do I want to work with this person? No, that's not what I want to do right now. Or, hey, let's go off and work with this organization. Well, I did it for a couple of years. No, that's not going to keep me on track. So all those obstacles were the evidence that I was moving, and it also was the boundary to let me know what I truly wanted to do. It was testing me.
It was very much testing, and yeah, people think, from what I do too, it's just like, well, this seems like it's so easy for you, and it's like, oh, you have no idea. There are challenges and testing every day, and I learned from you. Right after that, everything happens at the time it's supposed to and the way it's supposed to. And that has been, I think, you often when I am at a challenge, or it is what it is. When I was doing my first event last year in the fall with my impact, oh my gosh, I learned then that it is what it is, which is actually empowering. It's just, it very, very much is. So okay. So we're talking about catching your dreams. So how do people, like we were just talking, how do you get over those challenges? Because some people just stop. In fact, the majority of people stop. So what would you recommend for people who are, facing these challenges, which we all know they will if they're going after the dreams? What would be something you would recommend to them? Or yeah, I'll just go with that.
Well, and you remind me of a phrase that, and I think this is what you're referring to, Mark, that I mentioned is, how is that happening for you?
Yes,
right?
Yes, rather than to you.
It's not happening to us, it's happening for us. So every time I would bump up against a challenge, I would stop and say, how is that happening for me? One, it may be that it's getting me to think about maybe a belief that I had about myself. So that's one thing, is thinking I'm running up against this challenge because I didn't think I could do it, or I wasn't going to be financially successful, or this or that, whatever that is, or I'm not enough. Mm-hmm. So those bumpers are like, what's coming up? What is an awareness that is there for me? Like, that is a mirror for me. For what purpose that obstacle? It's a mirror for me. What can I learn from that?
Okay.
So that was a big lesson for me. And that also was something I use as I'm working with my clients. For what purpose this? And there's the other part of it too, which I just lost for a moment, so I'll come back to, is thinking about, well, even when it comes to the obstacles, here's the idea. It's an analogy. And forgive me, do you and Cheryl have children?
We do not.
Do not. Okay. So I'll just say, for anybody who's listening, or for myself, since I have 5, when you think about a child, right, that is, if it wants to get up and start walking. In fact, I even remember my youngest, I distinctly remember the day that he started walking. He was like a week and 4-year-old. And awesome. I got home from work, and I picked him up at my parents'. And he was like looking at me, like he couldn't see, but he was looking at me like, Mom, look at me. Mom, look at me. Just have that in
I love it.
Couldn't say it, right? Uh-huh. And he was sitting on the ground in the kitchen, and he pulled himself up, and he was holding on to one of the bars on the bar stool, the lower end of it on a bar stool.
Sure.
And he kept on looking over at me, and he would look at it and look over at me like, are you looking at me, Mom? And then he let go with one hand, and so I'm like, okay. And I still didn't quite figure out what he was doing. Right. And he would look at me, and then he let go with the other hand, and he was kind of like teetering, like, okay, I can stand on my 2 feet. Uh-huh. And he was looking at me, and all of a sudden I realized what he was doing. And he took a step and kind of, gained his spot. Right. And then he quickly took the next 2 steps and went over and grabbed onto the other bar stool. Right. And then looked at me like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And what it reminded me of is that he was not going to be able to move from one bar stool to wherever he wanted to go until he took the opportunity to take a risk and let go.
Right.
In that process, which he probably was, getting up, and maybe he tried to walk at some point before, me not realizing it, and just fell flat on the ground.
Sure.
We're going to they're not failures. we're going to have opportunities to learn along the way.
Amen.
And that's just another way of looking at it. Is like, if I'm bumping up against an obstacle, for what purpose? What can I learn? And if it doesn't go the way in which I intend, the best thing I can do is to learn from that, versus sitting back and say, well, that's the universe or God or whatever telling me that I'm supposed to be doing this, right?
Yes.
You know, what is what's the learning that's there? And just by my son Tyler experiencing that, is if you're going to move anywhere, even if it's uncomfortable in the process, even if you fall flat on your butt,
Exactly. Yes.
You're not going to get to where you want to go unless you actually take action to do that.
Exactly. And that is where people basically, you don't fail unless you quit. And you just got to learn. And like somebody I was talking to the other day, it's like, well, you now know what didn't work. So you're starting from a higher place there, and you just got to keep going. That is one thing that people they want the dreams, but they don't want what it takes to get the dream. And it's just like, or they want to jump forward, and it's like, what I believe is you're not ready if you jump forward because you haven't learned all of that along the path or the journey. And it's all for a purpose that I believe that you need to get to that point. All those things at the time where I wasn't talking got me to where I talk. I'm doing these now. So, and maybe soon in public. So,
that's good.
Yes.
Good for you. I love that.
So that is so cool. But, okay.
And I just remembered, Mark, what the other one was that I was trying to remember earlier. The other thing that helps me move forward is, especially during a challenging time, and last year was very challenging. I started off the year by having my mom and my brother passing away within 2 weeks of each other, and turning around and launching a business towards the end. So it wasn't easy going through that whole process.
Right.
But one question that I would wake up with each morning, I would say, what's the next right step?
Right.
Just
okay.
simple. What's the next right step? And that's what led me into the analogy that I just talked about. Is it may seem like baby steps. Like maybe what I'm doing today is, how is this, as long as I am making forward movement towards that goal that I'm working on, just what's the next right step? Like that quote, you don't need to see the whole staircase, you just need to see the steps in front of you. And that's another thing that's been very helpful for me.
Yes, I could see that. And I had somebody the other day, he's like, it was a gentleman, he's like, what if I don't know what the next step is? And it's like, I think many times we know what the next step is, but we don't want to take that because it's scary and everything else. And it's just like, just go for it. And you'll know pretty quickly if it's the next step or not. So, but unless you take the step, you basically stay like the majority of the people, and they don't ever get their dreams, and they do their Sundays, which don't ever usually occur. And we just can't have that, because when they don't get their dreams, there is the ripple of all the good they're doing in the world, and then they get the ripple when they've caught their dreams and how much good they can do. So,
and maybe it's not even to the point that you were just talking about, is maybe it is not even, if I don't know what the next right step is, what is a step that's going to move me in that direction, rather than making a judgment about, is it right or not? Is it the next step I should be taking or shouldn't be taking? That just gets us into that thinking stinking, and could be that analysis paralysis that gets us from moving. What's a step? What's a movement that'll take me towards that?
Great point, because you'd be afraid of making, it's like, well, I don't know if this is the right step, so I'm not going to do anything. So yes, I definitely know what you mean there too. So okay, so on this Villa Vision, so how long have you been doing it, and how much progress, or what progress have you made on that?
Yep. Sorry, just
right.
I was turned around. I had an alarm that was going off. I started the vision 3.5 years ago, as I mentioned.
Okay.
About a year after that, I started building my network around it.
Okay.
So basically, I had a virtual assistant who waved her magic wand with details and things I wouldn't even be able to describe.
Okay.
And basically what we did is we said, who are the individuals, the professionals that are here in San Diego that would be focused around, again, my ideal client at the time was a woman going through and after divorce. So we identified the people who were the San Diego divorce attorneys, CPAs, financial planners, real estate agents, and health and wellness professionals. And I started calling them, and part of it was, it ended up being connecting with people that had, there was a mutual connection, referrals, as well as just building up. They had a heart space for the work that I was doing with the the Villa Vision.
Sure. Okay.
So when that happened, by the time that I launched, which was a year later, so August of last year, by the time that I launched, I had 132 professionals.
Wow.
In those various different industries, and some slightly outside of that, who were part of this network. I backed into creating a network group that I hadn't planned on, that I ended up doing cross referrals, and still, because I was in the process of building out the Villa Vision, and for a period of time I had put a hold on working with clients because I was in the middle of dealing with the passing of family members. I was doing some past referrals, and I realized I'm creating a network. So with that, I launched the Villa Vision Wellness and Retreat Center out of my home, because I'm in the process of buying out the land to be able to expand that. And it was my network that was here to support me. So that was a big part of it. And then I actually developed, as part of my network, an opportunity where it was, I wanted to honor them. So I created a group for them. They're the ones who I actually do network opportunities with them about once a quarter, which I will be doing the end of this month. Having another opportunity for them to get together and to network, as well as to see where am I with the current status of the Villa Vision Wellness and Retreat Center. So the network is part of it. And then since I've launched that, not only has the network group grown, but I also launched the women retreats, which originally I was going to think of putting that off, but there was enough demand. They said, hey, we can't wait until you build out another
Yes.
So that was message to me.
That's cool.
Here and just put it out there and start doing it. So I launched the first one in February of this year. And then in addition to that, I was able to turn around the family home to make that into retreat housing. So I did that quickly. So a lot of things which were part of my bigger vision. And this is another thing, Mark. I keep on saying the vision is bigger than I can see right now. Kind of like that staircase analogy. The vision is bigger than I can see right now, but I keep on seeing more and more each time I take a step forward. So I knew that I wanted to have retreat housing, but we turned around the family home and created it into retreat housing, all of it 2 weeks. 2 weeks to turn it around. And the reason why I did it is because when I ended up getting, and I sold out in 5 days, when I ended up getting the women for the first retreats, 2 of them were out of town. So I wanted to create a space for them. And then more of the women who actually were in town wanted to stay on site. So we actually had contracted with a gentleman to put in air conditioning, air and heating units in the cement block house. It was finished at like 3:45 p.m. and the first 2 women walked in the door at 4 o'clock. I mean, that's how it And my contractor was building out the threshold on the front door had started to rot. So he had cemented that in and had a sign that says, please step over the threshold. I mean, that's to the point where it was like not even like just finished. And so awesome. We had women stay on site, and it was just amazing. So where I am on that right now is we're looking towards our the next retreat is in June. I closed the one this April, so we have the next ones in June. I have been doing is looking at a Kickstarter that is coming up soon. That'll be part of funding. I have individuals who have already donated to the Kickstarter. So what the Kickstarter is realizing as I am building out, I have the opportunity to purchase 3¼ acres next to me that eventually I will be building out.
Okay.
And it is already attached to my property, which is just under 1.5 acres.
Okay.
And so the idea of buying this, not only is it buying out my family land, so yes, it does keep it in the family, but it is something that I had conversations even with my mom before her passing to be able to build out the rest of the Villa Vision Wellness and Retreat Center. And once it is completely built out, it is not Dr. Karen's Villa Vision. That's not what it is.
Okay.
It is truly creating a center where I am collaborating with a number of practitioners who can resource and source and support these women in various different ways. Holistic practitioners, so they're not going to, or they know that they have other sources beyond traditional medical and traditional therapy to quickly and easily release whatever those emotional, mental triggers are that may end up in the body. So, for example, and I shared this with you, Mark, is within the last month, I've helped 2 clients specifically avoid surgery.
Oh, so, really? Wow.
One is she had ovarian cyst, and I was able to do the energetic work to release some sadness associated with her divorce.
Okay.
Went in, and she was surprised. The doctor's like, nothing's there. Another one dealing with the grief over the loss of her husband suddenly 5 years ago and was diagnosed with stage 2 colon cancer. Did the work all within 4 hours and was able to release that from her body, no surgery. So this is not just like, hey, you walk out of here feeling better. We're talking about major traumas that are turning into physical ailments. My goal is to help women, and again, I work with men as well, but predominantly women. So helping individuals when they have certain traumas, significant major events in their life that don't show up as major ailments. And those who do have the physical ailments that show up can also find other solutions to be able to healthfully release that from the body, aside from surgeries and medications. And I know you know that well.
I do. And that is so, I mean, we need so much of that in this world. I mean, because, well, most of the time they would just do it, and if you can get, cysts to go away and all that, what a blessing that is, rather than having to go under the knife or anything like that. That is, I'm speechless. I think that is so cool. Josh,
the body knows how to heal itself if we just get out of the way and release what's getting in the way of it healing itself.
Yeah, there's so much stuff. Plus, I've learned quite a lot from you, but there's so much there is to that we don't know, I believe. Especially the general public, I don't believe, knows very little of that, or they're skeptical. And I'm so glad you're doing this. This is so, that is, so do you, vision in the 5 to 10 years, do you have vision? I'll ask you, what is your vision for 5 to 10 years out?
5 years out from there. So first of all, I just turned 54. So let's start thinking about this. One of the questions was, hey, what does retirement look like for me? I love it.
Sure.
My financial planner asked me that. And I'm like, okay, I'm not exactly looking at retirement. I know some of my friends are like, hey, I only have so long to go, or I just retired. That's not me. I love doing the work that I'm doing. And also, I am looking at building a community, so I'm not the only one. That's the other thing, is when I do go on vacation, I also want to make sure that people have resources. And there's so many different resources that are out there beyond just me to do this work. So for me, in 5 years, it's looking at finishing the build out. So buying the land and continuing the build out. So on the property right now, there is the main house, which is mine, which now I have my home office. I have a spa room with a massage table, and I have a guest room. So this is where
awesome.
when I do have national or international clients that are not local,
Right.
they come and stay with me because I work with them for anywhere from 2 to 3 days.
Okay.
So they come and stay with me. And also bringing in a massage therapist because I'm all into when you're doing emotional and mental release, it's nice to have that physical release as well.
Very nice, yes.
And this is where I house not house, but I hold the retreat center. So the retreats, so doing the retreats here as well as, and you had mentioned my backyard. So
yes.
That is where I have the gathering. I've had gatherings up to even over 100 people that are out there. So right now within just the main home, right now it is the hub right now.
Okay.
However, with the rest of the land, there is the family house, which is where I did the housing for the retreat center for when I did the retreats. There is a 3,000 square foot art studio, which was my mom's, a gallery.
Wow.
She did pottery and ceramics. So looking at changing that around and bringing it up. It was built back in 1952, so it has a lot of history.
Okay, which is always cool.
So 2 rentals that are currently on the property. So the first one is my grandparents' first home that my youngest son and his roommate live in right now. So looking at turning the back rental into an opportunity for more retreat housing. And then I have over 2 acres of open land.
Oh, wow.
Add on to that probably 2.5 because it's actually connected to my property with a dry stream bed in the middle of it.
Okay, nice.
Is building up facilities that would house more retreat housing opportunities for small group and large group activities areas. One of them, I want to have a 24-person living room style meeting space.
Wow.
And
okay, that sounds
one
neat.
for a larger, bring in a kitchen, so healthy cooking, so an opportunity to revitalize my mom's garden to continue.
Yeah, there you go. Yes.
That. So those are the ideas right now, Mark, and it's one of those where I say the vision is bigger than I can see right now. It is one where it's not just going to be me. It's going to be, do you think of it sort of like well, you probably don't. Cheryl does probably. One of those going to the spa and, hey, I want a massage or I want a facial or pedicure.
Exactly, yes.
But think about that concept, but instead somebody's walking in similar to what you might do in a medical facility or a therapeutic office and say, look, I'm dealing with grief over the passing of a loved one, or I have just been diagnosed with stage 2 colon cancer, and I'm looking for other options. And they have somebody who can run them through a quick intake, given the professionals who are there, and give them 2 to 3 different options that they can choose from to more holistically and healthfully and easily release what's getting in the way.
That is so great.
My idea.
Yeah, that is what a great idea. And I was wondering how you did that when somebody came to you, but you'll have the professionals basically walk them through what the next steps are. That is so cool. So would you ever, I know you said you worked just a little bit ago with men, would you ever have the same thing like you have with the women as the men, or is that part of your vision?
You mean the one-on-one or the retreats?
The retreats.
The retreats, because I currently do work one-on-one with men as well.
Okay.
It's just one of those when you say, hey, I work with everybody, doesn't help. So I would say right now it is on, the main target is more on grief recovery from death or divorce, and more specifically with women, because that was my own experience.
Sure.
Right now, the retreats are for women. I actually am considering doing a couples retreat by the end of the year.
Nice.
So that's one thing I'm working on. And then the next, because I actually have had a number of men who have asked me if I would do retreat for men. And here's just my background. It doesn't mean I can't do it, because again, I've led, most of the people in which I've coached over my 30 years had been male. I feel like if I'm going to do that, I either want to partner with another male or bring a male in to do that. That's what I feel like,
I can see that.
I really want to make sure that whoever I am working with as a group, that there's only so many things that personally, just because I'm a different gender, that I can't relate to, just sympathetically relate to.
Right.
And I really want whoever I bring in to be able to fully support them through that process.
Yes. And I can definitely understand that. And that's showing who you are and your heart and everything else and your vibe. I'm honored to have gotten to meet you back in 2018. I am so glad that we're friends. So this is so cool. I'm just so happy that you're doing the podcast. I want to thank you on that. So how do people find you? I mean, if somebody's interested in what you're doing and wants to have your services.
The easiest way to find me is to go to thevillavision.com. So TheVillavision.com, thevillavision.com. And on there, it gives some brief information about me as well as the services, from doing one-on-one breakthrough work to the women's retreat right now. And there's also the opportunity, if they want to make a difference in the Kickstarter and paying it forward in regards to getting this going, that option is also there as well.
Very cool. Very, very awesome. So, and it's an undertaking, and anybody who's never gone through something has no idea what the undertaking is, but I'm just so glad. And 54, you're young. So, yeah. And I'm also of the mindset that, because I have people ask if I'm going to retire. It's like, why would I retire from something? It doesn't feel like work, and I love it. And I'm not of the traditional, you get to whatever, 60, 62, 65 because I see so many people that don't know what to do and go downhill. And I think that's a shame too. So I think that is so cool. So Dr. Karen, what else would you like to tell us today? Anything else that we need to know about all this that's going on?
Oh, I love it. I was just trying to think about what that would be, Mark. So there's one quote. I'm looking over here because it was a quote that came up as I was actually talking with a friend of mine here a couple of years ago. Okay. And the quote that popped out of my mouth is, it's not until we break the patterns of our lives that we are able to see the chains that keep us there.
I love that. I really love that. And that's so true. You don't see it until you're on the other side. I'm gonna have to have that on my wall. I think that is so cool.
I'll send it to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, on that, I also, a lot of times I end my podcast with a question for the guests. What would be a good question, putting you kind of on the spot here, that you would think that somebody who's stuck, what is a question that maybe you would think that would help the people going forward? Kind of just a question you would think that if you were asking somebody that came in that was stuck, what would a question be which you would ask them?
So if somebody came to me and they were stuck, the first question that comes to mind is, how is that a problem for you?
Okay.
Their answer to that then gives me an idea, and I would probably ask that question again, what's underneath it? For me, clients don't come to me saying, hey, I'm dealing with confidence issues, or I have past trauma that I need to get rid of. They come to me with the symptom. It's my goal to dig down to what's the question, what's the root that's underneath that. So I usually start with, how's that a problem for you? How's that showing up in your life? Tell me more. And we start unraveling it to get down to the root.
Very great question. That's another thing I got to remember. I think that is very, very cool. So thanks for the question. If there's anything else that we need to know, or we'll put all the stuff in the show notes so they can get a hold of you and everything else. I would love to, after your Villa Vision progresses, I would love to have you back on a follow-up podcast if that would be something you. Well, thank you. I would
love to. And then I can share all the wonderful obstacles that have shown up between now and then to keep me on track.
Yes, because people can relate and just show you that we all go through it to get to something that is our dream. And that it's just part of the process. That is for sure.
It is.
Well, Karen, Dr. Karen, thank you for joining us today, and look forward to our next podcast. I wish you all the best of luck on this whole journey. I'm so glad that you're doing this journey. That's going to be so helpful to the people that, it's just going to be helpful to the world. I mean, talk about ripple and getting all that going. So that is so cool. So, but
Thank you,
anyway,
Mark.
thank you for joining us, and we'll talk next time then.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.